Hello, and thank you for joining the Champion Within podcast, your premier go-to spot for unlocking your winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete looking to elevate your game to the next level, a coach leading the charge, an enthusiastic parent cheering from the sidelines, or an educator molding young minds, the Champion Within podcast episodes are packed with value, sharing the tools and strategies to unlock your potential and rise to new heights. Hosted by mentor, coach, and mindset leader Kate McCauley. Let's sit back and enjoy today's episode while discovering your champion within. And now, here's Kate.
Hey, Champion Within listeners, thank you for joining us. This is our first episode of Season 5. I am bringing a very important guest to you today. I've mentioned her quite a few times on the podcast. Not really sure what she's going to do this week, though, because she normally sends me a text message or calls me and says, "That was one of the best conversations you've had." Just so you know, those of you who have been on the show, she says that about all of you, and she always thinks that I'm doing a much better job every single time as I'm going along with this podcast, which I do appreciate the feedback. Today, it is my mom, the matriarch of the family. Here's why I decided to bring her on today, everyone. We have a family March Madness trophy that has been passed around for, I'm not even sure how many years. I have to check into that one. She is the winner this year. She is the champ, and that's why I thought she would be a great person to have on. She also spent her entire career as an educator. She has a lot of wisdom to drop with you related to that area of life. There's so many things. Some of you know her as the legend that she was in the school district that we both taught in together. But let's say hello to her. Mom, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Kate. And happy 100th episode. You didn't say that in the intro. I'm really very proud to be here today and sharing that with you.
Well, thank you. It is the 100th episode. If we're going to be honest, I'm not even sure how I got here, everybody. Those were some late nights doing editing. I don't really know how it happened, but I'm enjoying the journey. I really want to jump into first the journey of how you went into education. Let's go back to your education days when you decided to be a teacher. Why did you decide to go into education?
It's a very weird kind of journey. Your father and I were planning to get married. It was not a time when women traditionally would go and be like a lab scientist or a field scientist. I was a bio major. I had an opportunity between sophomore and junior year in college to take summer courses in education. It was a much easier route to get a high school education certification. You had to do X number of courses. You had to pass them. You sent the state of Pennsylvania your check. And look at you, you're now a teacher. There were no praxis exams or anything like that. But it just, at that point in time, it seemed like it made the most amount of sense to have something that I could do and start our new family, because I started teaching the year before we got married.
Did you do student teaching?
Yep. We did student teaching back in that time. We did it for one semester, and for whatever number of reasons, I went to Immaculata. It was Immaculata College back then. They always had student teaching, had to be the first semester of senior year. I think their thought was, if you were horrible at it, or if you really hated it, you had one more semester to figure out something else before we handed you a diploma. So that's how we worked out student teaching back then.
I actually think that maybe we should go back to that because there's some people that I question if they really wanted to be in the classroom. That's a whole different podcast for a different time and place. I've also had conversations with people who went through their entire college career, did the student teaching, and realized during student teaching, this is not for me. Now, they went in a similar direction, just not in the actual classroom, many of those people. But I don't think that that's a terrible idea to do that at the beginning of your senior year, because if I was one of those people who during that second semester, I'm in a classroom doing my student teaching, and I'm thinking, well, this is terrible. I cannot picture myself doing this. That would be pretty stressful considering I'm about to graduate college. I wonder why they switched it back. Do you have any idea why or when that happened?
Actually, no, I don't. And here's the funny part. If you go back in stories, there's always weird connections in life. When I went into the education department, Immaculata was, and it still is, a college university that the Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters run this college. And it just so happened that the nun who was in charge of the whole education department for high school, elementary, whatever, she had been my first grade teacher. It was just like
Full circle.
full circle. Here we are again. She was not warm and fuzzy for little first graders. She prided herself in everyone will go out and you will be ready to have a job. Now, this is long before people had laptops, the internet, long before all of that. And she insisted that we started, as soon as we started in education, putting together a portfolio. And it became kind of a running joke. People would come back and say, I got an interview, and the superintendent or the principal was like, here comes this other Immaculata girl with her portfolio. But now I look at it and think, this is ahead of the time. Everybody's coming with their portfolio. It's electronic now, but you wouldn't dream of just walking in like, and here I am. You're bringing something. I graduated from college in 1976, and she inspected your portfolio. She made sure that it was something, had lesson plans, unit plans, you name it, she had us do it.
She's a trendsetter. She
Yes,
would be
she
on
was.
TikTok right now, starting
she
a
would.
new trend so people can get teaching jobs or whatever that job is in the business world, that you have a portfolio. When you said, when I look at it now, I thought you meant you still have it. And for a second, I was going to say, where are you hiding that portfolio? You meant looking back and
Yes.
reflecting now. Makes much more sense to me. If you could see my face, my listeners, right now, I was thinking, I was never allowed to keep any crap here in the attic. So why is she allowed to? It is her house. I'm on location, which is rare. I normally hop on my studio link and I get to interview people all over the world. But I brought the microphone over to the house. This is VIP treatment tonight with the matriarch of the family, and as it should be. Let's move into your career in education. I was at a career fair today with some really cool kids at an elementary school locally here. And one of the fifth graders asked me a question, which caught me off guard for a fifth grader. She said, what is the toughest part of your job? The thing that you do not like the most? Most people say, what do you like best about your job? That kind of thing. What would you say, if you could reflect on your career as a whole, was the toughest part of being an educator?
There's a lot of things that fit there. But as soon as you started asking that and thinking toughest part, I'll tell you the part that I despised the most was actually having to write lesson plans and hand them in. It felt like, you're in the fifth grade and let me check your homework for you. And I'm not going to lie. As I got older, I got more subversive. So
I need to jump in here. I'm not sure if she's going to be honest. She's just going to say, oh, I said a couple things here and there. You need to tell people what you would put in. Let's take everybody back a little bit. When I was in the classroom, I spent 20 years in education. The last 15 years, I was at the high school level. And up until 2013, I was very lucky that my mom was up on the third floor and I was down in the gym. She was teaching biology. We should give people some context of what type of teacher you are so they know who you are. And I was teaching health and phys ed. So let's tell people, as that biology teacher, you hated those lesson plans, and we would be in faculty meetings and she's the goat. Everyone would just let her talk, including the principals. She had a unique way of just owning the room there. What did you put in the lesson plans to see if the administrators were actually reading them?
Plenty of times you would do these lesson plans, and because it was a lab class, you would frequently have lab activities, and they wanted you to spell it all out. And In all honesty, if you weren't a science teacher, you had no idea what I was writing there. I would write a very professionally done lesson plan that involved setting the lab on fire directly below the principal's chair. And no one would ever come back and say, what did you say you're doing on Wednesday? Like nobody ever once. And I would just sprinkle them in, every so often. I guess I got very comfortable in doing what I wanted. I will tell you, and I have said this to anybody who will listen, one of my mottos teaching always was that it is far easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And I truly believe that. Education has gotten very lockstep, and a teacher should have the freedom to look at their kids and say, today we need to all take a Coke bottle and package of Mentos out in the backyard and blow the Coke up in the air. That is not going to be on any state curriculum, but there's so many things kids learn from doing that. And the unfortunate part is that doesn't fit into anybody's standards. It's sad.
It is sad. I think that if we allow ourselves, we can put those things in there. There are some principals who are leaning towards allowing it, but because the testing is so pushed in all areas, teachers fear doing those types of things. But as you said, it is important to do those things when you can. Because sometimes you look at a class, some days are tougher than others. When you can make learning fun, blowing something up out back as the science teacher, or I say, you know what, this is what we're going to do today in health class instead of what we had planned, because I can tell everybody is really stressed in here. It lands differently. We have a lot of teacher DNA that runs through our family. So it's not surprising to me that 2 of my 3 children, who knows what the third will do, he's still kind of young to make decisions, thinking about them and teachers in general, maybe they're already in the classroom or somebody who is in college right now. What would you tell them as a piece of advice as they're going through this journey as an educator?
I think my advice goes back again to thinking about me and my training, or lack of such. If they go into education, they are going to be very well instructed on what are the classroom norms, what are the kinds of things that a teacher does and doesn't do. And I think my biggest advice when they were walking into their classroom is to trust your gut. If you get to the point that this classroom has your name on it, trust your gut. There's going to be any number of people who are going to come by and give you advice. Trust your gut that this is what needs to happen. Or you look at a kid sitting in front of you and say, something's off. You know. And maybe this goes back to why they decided that if you went through first semester and got to the end of December, the end of the semester, if you didn't know, you knew that you shouldn't really. I think that's the problem that so much of education today, so many people are not being encouraged. Trust your gut. I had a wonderful principal one time who he was notorious for people saying, oh, that guy, he's just, he doesn't want to do it. He looked at us and said, you're the adults in the room. Go do your job. That was an absolute perfect piece of advice. You don't have to come and check every single thing. If you have a real question, figure out who are the people who have good answers, because there's plenty of people who have none. Think if I was to say anything at all, if I was looking at a room full of new teachers for the first time, I would say, trust your gut.
I think that's a great answer. I love that principal said, you're the adults in the room. That's really a sign of true leadership. I had a principal one time say, I really think that the ship could sail without me here, basically saying the same thing. The adults in the room know what you're doing. You are the crew here that can keep this ship sailing. Mm-hmm. You have to trust your building, the people. And let's be honest, she's still got the feistiness in her in retirement. I heard her say, there's a couple people who aren't good. You're not going to go ask those people. You're going to have that in every single job. I see it when I go into the corporate space. I can point them out right away. There's people that just aren't the greatest. Let's just be honest. And probably if you're listening to this podcast right now and you listen to this type of podcast, you're someone that is trying to show up as the best version of yourself. So we're probably not talking to you, but you probably have someone who's popping into your brain right now thinking, yep, I know that person. If you are a leader, a principal, an owner of a business, you're a manager, some sort of director position in that corporate space, you need to trust your people and let them be the adults in the room. I think that's great advice. I love that. And to trust your gut as that teacher is such valuable advice as well, because we often second guess ourselves. I do ask you questions all the time about, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I think that is part of trusting our gut, knowing that we need to check on something. I'll often call my mom and say, is this a little bit too crazy for me to send this email? And it's usually something related to my son, his uniquely beautiful brain, because I go into hardcore mama bear zone. And she may say, put yourself on the 24-hour rule and then read it. Or she'll say, hit send. Depends on how many cups of coffee she's had so far. But who in your journey, whether it's professional or personal, was that person for you? And do you remember anything that they taught you along the way?
A couple of people. And it's weird. The older you get, I'm 70. The older you get, there are different people who show up in your life. I know one of the lines that you use in the podcast frequently is you're where you're meant to be. I think if we think about that question, who are the people? There are people who are where you need them to be, as well as you being there. I remember in junior year of high school, I had geometry teacher, Sister Jane, and she was going through the list of, what you got applying for college, la, la, la. She said to me at that point, she says, are you thinking about it being a teacher? And I'm like, no chance. Why not? What if I had people like me? And she says, you'd be great because you'd understand why they're like that. Yeah, okay, never mind. And it's funny because over the years, I kept touch with Sister Jane, and would pop her a postcard when, she got to be elderly and, felt bad when I knew that she had passed away. But to this day, I know my geometry. And I think that she stuck in there. There were also people who I worked with as colleagues. Some of them were the best friends you could ever have, that you could commiserate with. And I don't want to sound like it was all sunshine and roses, because there were a lot of tough times. You needed to have somebody that you could go and, kick the furniture and get cranky pants and know that they understood it because they were in that world with you. I sent a text message off to one of my friends that was also a science teacher that, we send each other articles. Oh, this would have been a good one to teach, and here we are both retired. We still today, we're laughing about things the kids did. And it was just, we enjoyed working with them together. This goes back to advice. You tell your kids when they're little, always look for the helpers. Well, when you're in a job as a brand new person, look for the helpers. Who is it that's hiding in their classroom with the door locked? They don't want to be your helper. But the person who comes by and says, hey, I got some extra paper in the office, I brought you some. Keep in mind who they are. I think I will be friends with some of these forever.
I love Sister Jane.
Sister Jane, geometry.
When I heard you talking about Sister Jane, she really saw that teacher in you, even if you didn't see it at the time. My daughter, Kylie, had at least 2 teachers say to her during her high school journey, and she's a junior right now, so it was probably her freshman or sophomore year, I guess they said it, you would be a great teacher. And at that time, she thought, I don't think so, because she wasn't really thinking she wanted to do that. Loves kids, always has, but she just didn't think she wanted to be a teacher. I'm going to do something different. And I really think it's because when I left education, it wasn't the prettiest exit, although I kept saying, I loved the school community. Don't let this influence you. They saw that it was a struggle for me. And I'm really glad that they didn't hold on to that and not consider becoming teachers, because I think both Kylie and Danny will be excellent. I love that those teachers saw that. I love that Sister Jane did the same for you. You know, you said something, and I'm curious because I really don't know. You said, what? What if they were like me? What do you mean by that? I would never think that you would be doing something crazy. Or what do you mean that you were a bad student? You were wiggly in your seat? What do you mean? What if the students were like me?
This is really weird because there are a few people that I have told these stories to. High school was not a wonderful time for me educationally. I had a wonderful time, but I will tell you that I was not a good student in terms of, you know, pre-reading all the assignments and being ready and always having everything together. There was no such thing as getting your kids diagnosed, but back in the day it would be, she can never spell words. I could give you any sentence. I have always said my very first and very best editor was my mom. She was the typing teacher, so it would be like, okay, we'll try and do this. And I have always laughed because my mother was bound and determined. Everyone can learn how to type. And then after trying to teach me, she goes, almost everyone can learn how to type. But my mom recognized early on that, like, I knew the work, just don't, the spelling was going to be a problem. In this day and age with spell checker, I have come to realize that I can fake it till I make it. I think I have a very good vocabulary because if there is a word I can't spell, I will learn every synonym for that word that's out there and substitute it. And I remember teaching that to kids when spell check first came out. Look what you can do. You can also do synonyms. You can do this other stuff. But that was coming from personal experience. I will also say to you, I do not suffer fools in a classroom very politely, I guess. The high school where I was going, it was very, very easy to cut class. And if there was a better deal that hour, I was doing it. And 90% of the time, no one caught on to it. I can still remember I have a girl that I see her every so often, a former student. And I remember saying to her, Kelly, you have to cut class at least once before you graduate, just so it can say, I was the bad girl. At least, and she was appalled by the idea of it. But like, I don't know that classroom teachers are the best teachers if they always follow the rules.
This is so funny because I never knew any of that, everyone listening. I never knew that, but I just cannot picture that happening. I have to tell everyone a funny story that she does know about. When I was a senior, well, I think at least you know about it. When I was a senior, there's something called Senior Cut Day. In 1996, taking it way back for all of you, my mother and one of her close teacher friends, Ellen Green, they took a day off to do lesson planning together. And they were planning out the whole rest of the marking period, the end of the school year, I guess, which they often did. This wasn't uncommon, but I had no clue that they were doing it. I had a full-fledged party planned for our house for the entire class of 1996. Whoever wanted to come that day was invited to come and hang out because my mom's a teacher. My dad's going to be at the bank working. We did not have cell phones back then. This was really well planned out. We were event planners. It was ready to go. The night before, I hear my mom saying, well, I'm going to be here tomorrow. We're lesson planning. And I almost died. Now I have to get on the phone. I have the cordless phone pulled as far as I possibly can, yank that cord into another room so they can't hear me. And I'm whispering, we can't have the party here. We can't have the party here. My mom somehow knows. She took a day off. And I think I know how she knows now. She used to cut class all the time, everybody. I did not get to go to senior. I fake sick while they lesson planned in the kitchen. And I was upstairs. And everybody else was at Lori's house. I did not get to experience it. Here I'm finding out all these years later that she's encouraging her own students to do crazy stuff. I just figured I would share that with you. I'm actually shocked in many ways. I have always been inspired how you would connect with what I'll call our challenging students when we taught together. I always had a soft spot for them too. They just were the type of kid where I thought, you know what? If you can do that, imagine what we could do if we could just get you to cooperate a little bit in some of these areas. You used to have a line where you would say Yale or jail to people because they really are so intelligent, some of these kids, and they're just putting that intelligence in the wrong place. Do you think that that journey of yours helped you connect with your students more?
Well, Sister Jane was 100% right. These are my people. I definitely feel that that was the case. Like I said, there were certainly some academic struggles. I can read. I struggle with writing without a spell checker. I have learned how to get past it. I had the academic side as a little bit of a struggle, and had a wonderful support, as I say, with my mom. But I also had that, I don't even want to call it rebellious, but like there's just every so often you get a good opportunity. And I feel like in life, they always say when you don't hear people lying on their deathbed saying, oh, gee, I wish I hadn't cut class. No, it's like we had a good time when we did X, Y, or Z. I think on some levels, as I said, I knew the girl who I wanted her so badly to cut class before she graduated. And I know she didn't. But at the same time, I look back and I think sometimes people need to have permission. Something is out there and, go and explore or go do something or whatever. And yeah, you have to follow the rules and you have to be you so-and-so, you have to go to detention, but did you have a good time? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I have changed an awful lot. I know I have changed. I would look at people who say, we're taking our kids on a vacation during the school year. Back in the day, I would have been like, what are you thinking about? There are certain times of the year when I would say, yeah, you need to be in the classroom doing school stuff. But these are great learning experiences. The world is not inside a brick building. The world for kids in schools changed after 9/11. It changed after the pandemic, for sure. Parents are very different in terms of what they think is okay for their kids. I know that you talked in one of your podcasts about, you were allowed to be out till the lights came on. And today that just would be appalling to people that, or I saw a video the other day where a lady was putting trackers in her toddler's shoes. And I'm like, how far can they go that you need to put a tracker in their shoe? But it's a different world today. When I say different, I mean in terms of parenting. I think the same boogeyman was out there when you were little as is out there today. I don't think there's any more boogeymen than there are. We just didn't hear about it in the news 24/7. If you walked in and said, we're taking these kids to New York on a field trip, and we found this museum that'll let us bring them in for free, all we have to do is pay for the buses. Today there would be 47 different forms that had to be filled out, and you'd have to have credentials for everybody at the museum. And it was like, get on the bus.
Right.
Just get on the bus. It's a different world. I know for myself, I had a wonderful time in education. I had a wonderful time with my friends who were going to be lifelong friends who were teachers. But I'm also loving retirement now. It's a young person's game, quite frankly.
Hey, listeners, are you ready to unleash your inner champion? Let's talk about something close to my heart. My merch t-shirts, my Champion Within assemblies, and the Village Mentality. When you grab one of these t-shirts, you're not just rocking some cool gear, you're making a real difference. Every single purchase helps fund powerful school and community programs that lift kids up, builds confidence, sparks connection, and we're straight up creating champions. My goal, when I roll in to give a keynote, I want to go into a local school in that area and bring the Champion Within School Assembly to life. So when you wear one of these shirts, you're part of something way bigger than a transaction. You're helping change lives. Thank you for being in this with me. From the bottom of my heart, much love and gratitude. After the show, head down to the show notes, click on that link, and go grab your t-shirt. Now let's get back to the podcast chat. This is a perfect time to move to that. And I always talk about movement and things that you love to do. And you can take it back as far as you want. But now that you're in retirement, not only are you winning trophies and beating us in the March Madness family tournament, you go bowling. Yes. You have your different groups of ladies that you connect with. What do you like best about the retirement? If you sit back and think, this is it. This is what I really love about retirement. Or maybe there's more than one.
You know what? I think well, there's a number of things. I was thinking about this the other day because since I have retired 12 years ago, the 12 school years, I have met a whole new group of friends. And it's funny because they are like me in an awful lot of ways, and they're not in an awful lot of ways. Some of these people they're going to be my friends probably for, we'll be old ladies laughing at the bowling alley together. And we're terrible bowlers, and we make no bones about the fact.
Are there any crazy youth parents there that are yelling at you to bowl better? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So you just bowl to have fun, even though you're terrible bowlers.
People, and there are a couple of people who have joined our group who want to constantly help you to get better. And we'll just, go and we'll sit and giggle and go, they don't really know why we're here, do they? They think we're here to bowl. But I have met another group of people who are at a similar place in their life. I have my quilting group that I really thoroughly enjoy that group. And they do a tremendous amount of charity work. And that is something that the give back portion of that I'm really loving.
I'm going to jump in. Why don't we tell people what that is? Because I do love to give shout outs on the podcast. Do they have a specific group they give back, or is it multiple groups?
There's multiple groups. We're the Undercover Quilters, and
which really aligns with your shady background of like doing things. I think we're just going to say that, but keep going.
Anyhow, I have no idea how they got the name because I've not been in the group very long. They are, and I didn't know this, but part of being a guild is that you do give back. So these people, and many of them, they are so talented. Their work is winning awards everywhere. But they do hundreds of quilts in a year that they will give away. They love doing kids' quilts, and currently we're giving an awful lot of probably close to 100 of them will go out in a course of a calendar year, and it's going to CHOP at King of Prussia. So the kids who are there for outpatient, like when you come in, you get a quilt on your bed to make it special as we get you ready for your outpatient surgery and stuff like that. There's quilts that are made to go to veterans groups. There's quilts that are made to go to a domestic abuse shelter. So, there's lots of different things. And they have a learning component, which is wonderful. Every month, there's somebody teaching us some new technique. As I said, but these women and men, there's a number of men who are very talented who are doing this kind of thing, and it's fun. They're like, again, they're my people. Like you just know, you have a good time and you laugh and, it's fun.
Yeah. It's important to surround yourself with people that you can laugh and have a good time with. And I love how you said it's a different phase of your life and you have different people. Really what I say all the time, you're exactly where you're meant to be and who you should be aligned with. It's happens the way it is supposed to be, and you got to enjoy those things. I wanted to bring up too that I love how you've told me before that they have people who come in and teach, or they come on Zoom sometimes and teach you different techniques, I assume it is, with the quilting. You also are still a teacher always. It's just who we are. But I love that my niece, your granddaughter Nora, and I know Shay, Kylie, different people have learned how to sew and do things. Nora is exceptional. She's even had some quilts hanging up, I think, in shows, right?
She did. She had her very first quilt. Nora agreed to put her quilt when the lady said, would she like to put her quilt in the quilt show? And that's a brave step.
Tell everyone how old Nora is.
Oh, yeah. Well, when she had her quilt go into the quilt show, she was 8. Yeah. And it was just, it was... Certainly she's not coming to our quilting meetings that go till 9:00 at night. It's the kind of thing that I enjoy teaching them. Shay is going to do a school project learning how to sew. And it's, and it's whether it's something as simple as this is how you put a button back on a shirt that you like and you lost a button from it, or making a whole quilt or making clothes or whatever. I enjoy kind of teaching them how to do this.
You know, I enjoy that you're teaching all of them too, because I don't know how to sew, everyone. My brothers all know how to sew. The middle school they went to, I was still in the Catholic school all the way through 8th grade. They ended up going to middle school. I married someone who can sew. I married someone who can sew, who can cook, who's just really the full package. Anyway, I love that my nieces are all learning this, because now I have all these people that I can say, sew a button on for me. I love that teaching piece for you, that you get to still have that learning aspect, and that you really are just always teaching people. I think it's just part of who we are.
I think it is. You said in the beginning that, education is in our DNA. It is. It definitely is. My mom was a teacher. 3 of her sisters were also teachers. We've come by this naturally. I have, in my family of 6, 5 of us at some point in time were teaching in classrooms. It is something that I guess I grew up seeing my mom teach, and I guess you did to some degree. I think anybody who becomes a coach, like, there's a very, very fine line between being a coach and being a teacher. And in all honesty, the best coaches are probably using teaching techniques that, would be anywhere would be taught as teaching.
100%. I think most coaches are teachers, whether or not, and I'm not saying that a coach is an actual teacher in a classroom. Sometimes they are. A coach, in my opinion, is an educator of the game. They may not say, I am a teacher, but they are teaching the game. They are teaching life lessons. I would agree. The best ones, like you just said, whether or not they know it or not, they are using strategies just like you use, just like I use when we see something's off with a kid. And we're not just talking about football or cheerleading or swimming. We're talking about life. We see something's off with a kid, and we're talking about football skills, baseball skills, lacrosse skills. We see something's not right. There's a way to go about it that you can build a kid up or you can break them down. And when you break someone down, whether you're a classroom teacher, you're a coach, you're both, in those roles, it's really hard to get somebody to believe in themselves again and to trust you. So let's talk first about when you were young. What did you do, organized or just for fun, for movement?
It's very funny. I keep going back to my mother, and I wasn't thinking today I knew this was coming, that she was going to play so much in my head. My mom was born and bred and loved being a city girl. When we were kids, my dad was a traveling salesman, so we had to live close to the turnpike, which put us out in the middle of God's country, because that's where the end of the turnpike was. She was such a good trooper. But my mother, being a city girl, there were a lot of things that she did not do. And she was determined that we were going to go and do them. One of the things that she didn't do was she was not a swimmer, but she insisted we all go learn how to swim. We did not have a pool. She would take us to the local pool. We would go for the swim lessons. I went all the way through and got, I don't even know what they call it right now, but it was WSI. It was a water safety instructor. I taught the lifeguards. And she was like, keep going, go do that. But she would never have gotten hurt doing it. But she encouraged us to go do things like that. We always had bicycles and, get on your bike and go with your friend here, there, or the other place. My dad was very handy and always insisted, you need to know how to fix a flat tire. So we did. We knew how to do stuff like that. He'd take you to the gas station, show you how to fill up the bike tires. So we just looked at it as, let's just go and do this.
It wasn't really necessarily the bikes. It wasn't, we're doing this for movement. Everybody was outside. It was kind of like that streetlight thing for us. Everybody was outside. It's not like, honestly, it's annoying to me sometimes with my own kids. I have to say, go outside. You have to go outside. I don't think it's just my kids. I think that's pretty common with kids, unfortunately.
I think you're right.
But so the bikes and being out there, the swimming was definitely organized.
The swimming was more organized, but it's not like we were on swim teams. She wanted us to know how to swim and not be afraid of doing that. It's weird when I go to all these games now. I don't remember girls' teams, or maybe we just didn't participate, but my friends weren't either. I don't remember girls' teams. There were boys' teams. It just was not something that you saw, when you got to I guess when you got to middle school age, there was CYO for basketball, and everybody would go and learn how to do that. I don't remember that there were ever cuts in that. In high school, there was a basketball team. I don't remember field hockey or lacrosse or soccer. It wasn't a thing back. This is the late 60s, the early 70s. Certainly not in our neighborhood. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So I got to ask now, when we're playing sports, we played a lot of sports, all four of us, and we're very close in age. When I was a senior in high school, my brother Jay was a junior, nobody's a sophomore, and Drew was a freshman, Steve's an eighth grader. We're running around busy doing all the sports. I mean, I remember playing most things that were available, and maybe like Grandma, you encouraged us to try a lot of different things. What was your favorite to watch? You don't have to pick favorite kid. I already know the answer to that. But if my dad was here, he would definitely pick me. But anyway, we had a lot of different sports that we were all in. But of all four of us, what was the one you really enjoyed actually watching and enjoyed the actual sport?
I know I like basketball far and away. I used to say to people, basketball is in our blood. I don't know what it is about the sport. You all played basketball at some level, every one of the four of you. It was definitely the one that, for me, was the best to watch. But I'm also going to go back and say, as the mom, I got to watch basketball from the snack bar. And the moms were having a great time back then. You'd poke the girl beside you, your kid's on the foul line. That we had as good a time at your basketball games as the players were having. And it had nothing to do with the basketball. Parents watching sports was a very different event back when you were playing. And we laugh about it. It was really good times doing that.
Basketball is still something, as we'll talk about that trophy soon. But we all still love, even the rec leagues around here that my nieces and nephews are in. It is not uncommon for our whole family to roll into a 12:48 game. And we were just at someone else's game in another gym in our neighborhood. And it's like, oh, you're coming to see everyone's game. Yeah, well, we don't have our own games at this time. So we're all coming to see, whoever's playing at that time. And we'll see, oh, there's Mama and Papa on the other side of the gym. We do just love playing basketball. And I believe, I'm not sure if Steve does it yet because his kids are young, but I think all four of us are coaching at some capacity. I know Steve did it with T-ball, definitely. Not sure he's done it with basketball yet, but I'm sure he will. And Steph actually, his wife, is probably going to be the coach. If they listen to this, Steve, you should let her be the head coach because she's better than you. Anyway, I think that you didn't like watching football when the boys played. Oh, you're shaking your head no. Because I vividly remember you saying, I'm afraid that they're going to get cleated. Someone's going to step on them. And maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly, but what was the sport that you disliked for whatever reason, and why did you dislike it?
I'm going to be very honest. It is the one that I have from forever. Just watching baseball makes my eyes want to bleed. It's just, I just can't get my head wrapped around it. Football worried me. And I think the noise of football, the clash when the play starts, that's I think mother's heart's kind of just like, let that be okay. Let that be okay.
Okay.
But baseball just tortures my soul.
So just boring.
It's just, yes, I guess basketball, it's always moving. There's always somebody going, coming in and out and whatnot. But baseball.
This is explaining a lot. You were always in the snack bar volunteering. I'll do it. Nobody can go. I'll go do it during the game. It's okay. No, I'm just kidding. She was on the sidelines too, but she definitely, I could see that. I know even for your grandson, my oldest, Danny, he was playing baseball and lacrosse at the same time. He ended up picking lacrosse because it's the same season. When you get to a certain age, I think he was around 9 or 10, you have to pick because you can't be at two different places at once. You have to be at practices. When you're little, you can try out both and make it work because it's not as crazy with the schedules. he picked lacrosse for that reason. He'll still say it was faster. I loved running up and down the field. Lacrosse is just more my speed, is what he would say. And baseball, he wasn't bad at it, but there was a lot of dandelion picking in the fields and waiting. And it's funny, my husband, Dan, loves baseball. We get the MLB package. We see everything. And I just don't know how he does it. I am wondering, how are you watching this much baseball? He'll watch it on his phone. He watches it on TV. He just really is a baseball fan. And I think there was a part of his heart that was crushed when he decided my kids not to play baseball, but of course supported them and said, you do you, it's your journey. That's interesting. I remember you talking about the cleats with football, but I guess it was, you were worried more than you didn't like watching it.
Yeah, it definitely. And it is funny because if you step back and look, Jay's girls love going to the Phillies and all of that. Sean is playing baseball. And yes, we go to the games, assuming it's not too freezing cold. Wyatt started playing baseball and we go and watch. And, but if I had to pick a sport that I want to watch you doing, it's not going to be baseball.
Yeah, well, she'll be there on the sideline. You and Dad are always going to those games, and we love that. I could see that because I don't love it. Baseball at a Phillies game is different, though,
yes.
If we're going to be honest. It's a whole experience, like you were saying before with things. It's different than Little League baseball. And I know some of my baseball people, you are hardcore, and I'll be getting some messages like, well, if you did a tournament ball, I don't dislike you. I love you, my baseball and softball players. I love you all. But, to each their own. Well, let's talk about that tournament that we all have. It's a March Madness tournament. This goes back for a long time. Definitely when my oldest, who's 19 now, was probably early elementary school, first or second grade, we started officially making it a bracket. One of my brothers, I think it was Jay, got the trophy. It is this big, gaudy trophy that we all want in our house every single year. You got to know, people, that it has rules attached to it. If you have the trophy, so my mom is currently holding the trophy. Well, not in her hand, so that would be really weird if she loved it that much, but she's currently holding it here in the house. Next year, when March Madness rolls around, whoever the winner is, the first rule is that you have to turn that trophy over within 24 hours of the championship game. If you do not, we can enter your house, take the trophy, because it is rightfully ours now as the new winner, and one item of our choosing from your home that we could keep for that whole year with the trophy. So this is high stakes here. You need to get your act together. And when we deliver the trophy, you can do it however you want, a handshake or whatever. We'll play One Shining Moment in the car. We blast it. I mean, we go all in. Some years there's some trash talking happening on the text chain we have going back and forth, because there is also a rule that you can have two brackets. This was set by my son Danny in early elementary school. Some people, my brothers, and some other people sometimes, don't like the two bracket rule. They think one bracket only and then you're out, but you can pick whatever. Anyway, I always pick two brackets, so I'm team two bracket. But the trash talking is really, we keep it real. It's all fun, but it gets intense sometimes in there. When I posted about this on LinkedIn, a couple people were sending me messages saying, in this era of everyone gets a trophy and everyone wins, this is great because you're not doing that. It's an actual winner and you guys are messing with each other, keeping it real. It's really the four of us, my brothers and I, Generation X 100% in that chain of the text. So there's lessons to be learned here, because sometimes people really think they're going to win the trophy and then they don't. That happened this year. We're going to get to that. What do you like best about our March Madness family contest we have?
I think it's hysterical how, now this is my first year winning.
It's your first year ever winning?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Second year that it was the playoff game that was going to be deciding. And it was 2022, I think, is when Danny and I were going head to head. It was funny because your dad and your brothers were all at the Masters.
I remember that.
And so Danny
We
and
had
I,
you over for dinner,
yes,
actually.
Danny and I got to watch the game together, and he very decidedly, that game was, there was no question about it. So here I am this year again, up against another grandson who's littler and taken this very, very much to heart. I'm going to tell you that for me personally, I always think it's hysterical that people are like, well, how are the girls going to pick their winners and whatnot? And I have a strategy. I keep sticking to
What's your strategy?
My,
are you going to give it away now that you're the champ?
Mine, because I will be doing this for hours going through it. And I'm sure there are people like, no, I just know who the winner is. I look at things like the strength of your season. And I look at things like, how did you do in the last 10 games of the season? All those statistics. I look at them and think it's kind of like a life thing. If you took the easy season this year and you're ranked number 4, but you had strength of season as a 50, give me strength. I look at that as a life thing. Here's these guys and they think they're coming in here. And yeah, maybe you're going to be the Cinderella, but chances are, like, it looks to me, strength of season really tells me an awful lot about a team. I love watching how some of the littles make their decision on,
yeah, sometimes it's the mascots or the team colors. And as they get older,
exactly,
it is interesting to see how that strategy changes.
Yes, absolutely.
You can also do auto pick. We've had some auto picks.
Yes, for the real little ones, their parents will just do an auto pick. I think there was a winner one year, and he picked mascots that he he would see what the 2 mascots were, and maybe he would pick his favorite, and he ended up winning. So it does tell you there's an awful lot of chance in the whole thing. I thoroughly enjoyed Monday. I woke up thinking to myself, oh, I can't wait for the trash talk on the, it's just, there's something about it. And I know it's probably a real Delco thing coming out. You need to know how to trash talk and not go for the person's jugular. There's things that you can say yes and no. I think on some levels, I never really did think about this. We only have one winner and everybody doesn't get it. I never thought about it that way. There's one trophy. I think it's good for people to, like the little kids, to see adults can be disappointed. Oh, I came so close.
Right.
Or I lost by 1 point. And how does your mom or dad or Uncle Dan, what's he saying about losing by 1 point? Or what's he, Aunt Kate's, she knows all the mascots or whatever.
There was a long period of time where there were no kid winners.
Oh, we went a very long time for no kid winners.
And when the first kid won, I can't remember who it was. I know Danny had it and he handed off to Wyatt. I don't remember, but I don't remember who the winner was of the kid zone, but I remember that text thread was like, the kids take that trophy.
Yes.
They went all in with that. That was pretty funny.
And I think I like the idea of learning how to do your trash talking in a safe place, as crazy as that may sound to anybody.
I think that's actually a really good point. I just heard a mom, it's not about this trophy, but it's very similar. We were at a family wedding, actually, so she's got great DNA. And she said, someone said to me, well, he's so great at school. He got the Peacemaker Award, my cousin's son. And she said, wait, my Steven's getting that? She was a little surprised. And then she and I and a couple of people at the wedding were all talking about how it's great to get that at school. And people say he's so great at school. And people are always saying he's great at our house when he plays and blah, 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 all these things. And we were talking about how outside of our house, we want them to behave at someone else's house at school. And there are wild, crazy people sometimes at our own house. And that's really how we want it to be. Same concept here, really, that we learn how to trash talk. You just said we learn how to trash talk in a safe space. If we want to, everyone needs a safe space. Sometimes it gets a little crazy with these safe spaces, but we appropriately learn how to do it and how to respond, how to take it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't think the adults got into the trash talking as much this year.
This year, the kids went in.
The kids went hardcore, and it was weird to watch the evolution. The older kids are kind of stepping back and letting the middles.
You're right. My Danny, who's 19, didn't really say much in the thread fest. He gave an occasional thumbs up or something.
Yep.
Kylie, who was a junior in high school, when we came to the championship game, which was a great game, by the way, if anyone watched it, and my nephew had Houston, my mom had Florida, and it was back and forth. He was already in bed, but he really thought he was winning. So
he was winning when he went to bed.
Well, he was when he went to bed, which is such a crusher when you get up in the morning. He made posters, and he's not a Houston fan, but he's a Houston fan for the tournament because he wants that trophy. Right. He had little posters and he was taking pictures of it, sending it to us on the text chain. And then one of my nieces came in and said, "Go Mama, go Gators," like came in hard. And ironically, they're very close in age and have always been really cute growing up together, but it's all in good fun. But he took it tough. And he doesn't listen to podcasts, so I could share this a little bit. He took it tough, and I think it was a lesson for him that my sister-in-law and my brother really had to teach him. And maybe he didn't even learn the lesson yet, but it's developing. But people were saying, like, "You're going to lose." And he was getting mean emoji faces back to everybody. And then Kylie at one point came in late into the text. It was even the next day. She said,
the next day,
"Congratulations, Mama." And then my niece Lucy came back with, "Oh, hey, Kylie, thanks for showing up in the text chain. How's that feel?" It was like, and the middle of the cousin pack really was embracing that, but they were going all in. I told you we can steal stuff. My one brother jokingly said, "Oh, we're going to come steal your skincare." And these are like middle school age girls, some of my nieces. So then they were, taking pictures with their sister's skincare saying like, "Ooh, ma, ha, ha, you can come get it." She was like throwing her sister under the bus. And it was just really funny. I love that part too.
There's so many times in life where you look at kids and you think, he should tell that kid off.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's the real world. You need to know how to do it.
Right.
You're not attacking the person. You're attacking whatever it is that they're doing or they're,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that I felt like this. And I have to be very honest. I was so disappointed that I won because I really did want this for Shawnee.
I know.
It was the craziest last minute, but he got there the same way. If you think about it, that Houston beat Duke.
Right.
It could have just as easily have gone.
And there's, I mean, he wants the trophy and he really probably isn't ready to be like, "There's a lesson here, Sean,
No.
But the lesson in this type of thing is, that Houston story. You made it here this far to the championship, because when Sean's playing basketball or baseball or when it's just life, there's going to be times when you don't win, when you don't get that promotion, you don't get whatever it is you've been working so hard for. Now, he's not on Houston's team, obviously, in this, but he's going to have moments in life where he is. He doesn't know it, and it's not like we're like, let's make this a lesson. But everything in life is really a lesson.
There's so much talk about, the crazy parents at sporting events, and it makes the network news, for God's sakes. These are people that never learned that lesson themselves. That, their kid is standing in the background to watch on the network news that your parents were out there fist fighting at my softball game or whatever it was. Parents that just like, my kid has to always, be on an all-star team. What?
There's a lot of lessons to be learned from not getting it, losing, if you allow yourself to learn it.
And there's some parts of it that I think it's a shame that we don't go back to the moms in the snack bar poking you to say, "Go watch your kiddies up the bat."
You know who would love that? The 12 of us that always work in the snack bar, that same 12 group. You know who my people are. The ones that always do everything now. Maybe we should go back to, I don't know if we can go back to that. But, I was just thinking of something when you said that about your kid. This is going to sound really mean, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to get some backlash for this one. Do you think they were picked last for kickball? Why? The crazy ones. Why are they so crazy, do you think? Because they weren't crazy when we were young. I don't think.
It's weird you're saying that, because I read an article in an education book. Now, this is not doing a full circle. How about it? It was an education magazine, and it was talking about how kids in school were changing. This probably has to go back 25 years ago. The premise of the article was that this was a group of parents that were coming along, and these would be parents of people the kids were slightly younger than you. I'm still the boomer generation. It was not us. It was this next group that was coming along behind. But that the world was in such a state that they were able to live a life where they never had to tell their kid no. And the whole idea was that they wanted to make their child's life have no bumps in the road. So they never told them no, and that they were smoothing out the road all the time to the detriment of the kid. And mom and dad who were doing this were not doing it maliciously. They looked at their child and go, my precious child, I never want
It was from a place of love.
It was a place of love.
So they thought.
But they took it to an extreme.
Yeah.
And I can still, it's funny, like how this circle goes. I remember looking at a mom once, and her son, he just would do nothing. He would sit there and he'd smile at you. It was just like, my mom said, I don't have to do that. My mom says I don't have to do what I don't want to do. I remember him. He was probably a freshman, maybe a sophomore, but he was no more than that. And again, because I had been there for a very long time, there were things I could say to parents and get away with that a new teacher shouldn't. I remember looking at her, and she was arguing that we should stop putting demands on him. And I remember saying to her, I hope they will let you bring him to work with you, because no one else will hire him. No one else will keep him on the job. And she was appalled. She says, I don't want him working with me. Well, you set this up. I can remember again the principal knocking on the door the next morning and saying, Mrs. So-and-so went to the superintendent, that you're the first person that told her she should stop telling her son he can have anything he wants and do whatever he wants. And that how can she fix this? And somehow the superintendent was going to be the one to figure that out.
Right.
Well, it wasn't a complaint. It was like, why did no one tell me this before? That I'm going to have to take him to work with me.
It's so funny. Today when I was at the career day, I got a couple eyeballs from people when I said this. I had the students think about some dreams and goals, things that they want to do. I said, if you have any dreams or goals that are popping in, put your hand over your heart, so you can focus on that. 2 strategies as a teacher. I want them to focus on those things. Also, we're calming down. We're focusing now. That's an easy way to steal that if you're a new teacher. The teacher in the room actually was awesome with the 2 claps, 1 clap. You got to get their attention somehow. So we got our hand over our heart. And there was a couple kids who were like, man, I got no dreams. You always got those kids. I love those kids because they actually have something pretty cool in there. They're just not ready to share it yet. Keeping it locked up. I just randomly threw in. I did it twice during this career day because I had a couple of these guys in the class. I said, well, maybe it's just you don't want to live in your mom's basement. Quickly, their hand went right to their heart. And they were like, looking at me like, yeah, I don't. So I think sometimes you have to say, do you want to take him to work with you? Do you want to live in your mom's basement forever? And the eyeballs and the looks that I got, like, are you serious, lady? I'm like, well, even if you don't know your dreams, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So get your hand over your heart.
And I'm sure if you could go back and grab the parents who end up on the network news for a fight at your, 8-year-old's whatever sport, if you could grab them and say, what did you really want for your kid? They did not want to be embarrassed to see their mom or dad doing that kind of stuff. I don't know that they know how to express, what do you want baseball to do for your kid? Why do you go and sit in the freezing cold at a lacrosse game today and holler at everybody else's kids? Why do you do that? Like, I'm not sure that we were doing any better. We were just told, here's the water ice, go sell it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always crazy people. There were crazy people when we were young. I just feel like some of them now feel that they can be crazy.
Society has given people on some levels, be yourself, even if yourself is crazy. Well, maybe we should be saying, yeah, be yourself.
Be the best
Edited.
version of yourself.
There we go. Be the best version of yourself.
Be yourself edited was kind of funny, though. I may start throwing that into a visualization. Be yourself edited if you are doing some crazy shit.
Yes, like, where does your
Let's
editor,
edit
what's your
that
editor
out.
thinking, you know?
But I like to say, be the best version of yourself. That's the healed version of me. But really, it is, you might need to make a little edit there. And, you know, that's really why I do the village mentality. I go in and I talk with the parents after I work with a team or a school. I'm going to admit to you, when I was learning with Ryan's uniquely beautiful brain, I didn't exactly know what I was doing. And there were definitely times where I was probably coming in too hot and fierce. And I wouldn't say I would change it, but I think I might approach it differently in some ways because I would edit my crazy. That's what I would do. I think it would have helped him because I think at home, I definitely was getting all fired up sometimes. And that isn't what he needed to hear. Once I started to shift and see things differently, because it was all about me at that point. I was worried. I mean, it was about Ryan, but it was about me too. How am I going to fix this? Why can't I help this kid? And what I was like, how's this going to affect Ryan's life? Of course. But it was a lot of, why can't I do this for my son? I think maybe I'm just, I'm not a researcher on youth sports, but who knows? Maybe it is something that they're dealing with themselves. I don't know. Maybe they weren't picked last for kickball, or maybe they truly don't know. No one has ever taught them how to do this because, like we said earlier about that coach, it can make or break a kid. I mean, I've seen kids who are now adults say they stopped playing a sport or stopped doing some sort of activity because their parent made them hate it.
Well, it's funny, our brains are going the same way because I'm thinking to myself, how many times in youth sports, especially, did you see a kid that you'd go, this kid's really good. This kid is they're just different. They were on 5 traveling teams and they were doing year-round, whatever the sport was. By the time they were a junior in high school, they were hanging out with McDonald's because they had had enough of it. I think for many kids that you would look at and go, they're really good at this. I don't care whether it's sports, whether it's academics. It doesn't matter what it is. You also need a break. Mm-hmm. Like you can't be always on for your sport. I love kids that have no idea what their schedule is. Like I'll look at, talk to them and say, when's your next game? Oh, I don't know. Right. To me, that's a kid who's putting it in perspective of their whole life.
Right. At a certain age.
At a certain age.
Yeah.
Ours are young enough for that. You look at Kylie. Kylie will be able to tell me.
In high school, she should know. If not, I'm like, you're a hot mess, Kylie. Let's get it together. But yeah, you're talking more of our middle school, elementary age, your grandchildren.
Absolutely.
Right.
So if they're putting this game is in context of the rest of my life, then you've got it as a balance. I think for the average kid who's a player, that's where they should be. I think that's where their moms and dads should be. Again, going back to my mother, we would get so annoyed with my mom. She had one sister who was always bragging about her kids, that they were always getting this award or that award. And my mother would say, oh, and I have such nice average kids. And we're like, really? We're only average?
That was her response to her sister. Yes. I have nice average kids.
I have nice average kids. And it was like, wait a minute, I got 100 in
Wait,
that.
What did she just say about us?
But I think in hindsight, looking back, we're not all neurotic.
Right.
And there was a time there where they were. And you got to go, yeah, let's be the nice average kid because I'm going to have a much better time. It's like going to my bowling now. We know we're terrible. And if nobody gets hurt on a given week, everybody did well. It's like,
right.
That I think sports should be fun, number one.
Yeah.
How many times did we look at high school kids and go, you're not going to the NFL? Right. I love you to death.
Right.
but you're not going to the NFL. Go have fun playing football.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's two sides of that too. You encourage them to play and do those things. And as much as we might have said, you're not going to the NFL, it wasn't a dream crusher type kind of thing. It was more of a, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. You actually do need to do these other things too, because at least in the school we taught in, and I hear it with my own kids and people definitely that I'm surrounded by in the sports world sometimes, they forget that that's not the end all be all. If you want that to be your dream, that's fine. I'm not saying don't have that as a dream, but there's a very slim chance that you're getting there. I'm not saying it can't happen, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. I love multiple sport athletes, things like that. And that's why you see it a lot of schools, really, they're encouraging that you do something every season, and you can't play football every season. I think that it's important that we keep it real with kids too.
Well, and I think the other thing, and this goes back to schools that maybe have a forced curriculum on them, the shame of it is that when you're teaching kids, and I don't care what it is, whether it's in the gym for sports, whether it's in a math class, science class, English class, we don't show kids how many places this can go. I know you've had two former students on here that were both really good athletes, who have stayed in the sporting world, but they're not on the field.
Right.
They're not on the court.
I think that's a good point to bring up.
And they're still part of that world, but their preparation in how they approached going to college or doing whatever they were going to do, they kept it real.
Right. That's important to say to your kid as you're journeying through. When we're talking about high schoolers, when we said you're not going to the NFL, you do have to have those real conversations. I'm thinking of Jeff, for example. I know he mentioned his football coach keeping it real conversation about schools and colleges and different things. And to say, if you love something, you can do something in that field, but it might look slightly different. I say that all the time when I do a visualization with people. You're going to visualize what you think it should be, what you would love it to be. And that's what I want you to feel and experience. But no, it might be something slightly different, but close to what you think can happen is what is actually going to be happening as you continue to do this work. There's so many possibilities out there that people don't always know. You have to tell people, just like the parents don't know how to act. I didn't know how to navigate the IEP world when my son Ryan went into that whole journey with dyslexia and ADHD and all of that. I didn't know how to navigate it. I had to learn. I had to be taught by other teachers, other special ed, really gurus is what I'll call them. And same thing with the youth parents, students. We have to tell them.
I think it's absolutely the case. And you have said it a number of times. I've experienced it now being the grandmother going to sporting events. My mind is blown at times where there are people that have to be told, this is how you become a fan watching fourth grade basketball.
Right.
When you're sitting there hearing this, you go, really? But then you look around and you go, good conversation here. Because
it's a needed conversation, but also sad that you have to have it.
Right. Exactly. And I'm not sure.
But we do have to teach them.
Absolutely. And I don't know.
If not, it gets real crazy on those sidelines.
Absolutely. And again, the older you get, sometimes you just go, well, I've seen it all. Well, no, you haven't, because guess what? Next week's bringing.
Right. Next week you have T-ball. Right. It's going to get wild.
It's going to get wild.
Well, we could go on and on. I'm not going to keep you here forever. I may have to have you back again. Someone actually suggested that I do a matriarch series. Who knows? Maybe I'll bring you on. You're like, nah, no thanks. But maybe I will bring you on as it aligns. We'll see where that trophy lands next year. And if you keep it.
Well, no one has ever done a repeat.
Well, technically, no. Although during the pandemic, it did stay in my house because we didn't have the 2020. I'll just say.
That's not a repeat.
I mean, technically, it's not a repeat, but we did have it for 2 years. I'm just saying. But no one ever had a repeat. I don't think I knew that.
No.
Okay.
Go through the list.
Yeah, I know you're right.
And the funny thing to me when we talk about this, I don't know if you'll keep this in, Do you remember Danny in the very beginning? He had books on every team. He had statistics.
Well, he still does the statistics and everything.
He could have probably told us the shoe size of the best
100%
point guard on every team. And he didn't win for a long time.
He didn't, and he was so mad. He actually had his name. It might still be like that in our family pool on the CBS Sportsline thing. It's called Bracketologist Danny because he was,
I don't think it's that anymore.
He might have changed it. He probably did. He's still, maybe not the shoe sizes anymore, but he really did know all that about their shoes and favorite foods and everything. But he really does know even the Cinderella stories. He'll come in and say, Mom, Drake's going to do this and that. And I'm like, who's Drake? Like, he knows all the teams that are coming in.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. He didn't win for a while.
And it, like you say, the longest time. And everybody was like, oh, I wish Danny could win.
Yeah, we were feeling bad. Now we all kind of want Sean, even though my mom beat Sean this year. We're all kind of hoping for Sean next year.
Yeah, we are.
Although he did learn, or is still in the process maybe, of learning a lot of lessons there, even if, I think it will just end with this before I go to my signature question, that it's not always fun learning lessons.
No.
He woke up. We're going to end with this last part about the trophy. When I woke up anyway, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm waking up probably closer to 7. I'm yelling to everybody, okay, we ready? Have a good day. As Kylie's leaving for school, I'm telling Ryan, let's go. I make Ryan a smoothie. He's so spoiled, the youngest one. But anyway, I get a text message and it's Shawnee saying, congrats, Mom. Now, I knew that maybe my brother or sister-in-law was behind it, as they should be. Wonderful parents to do that. You got to teach somebody good sportsmanship. So I wrote back, you're awesome, Shawnee. And then I said, congrats, Mom. And then that's when Kylie's first text came in and people were all saying, congrats, Mom. And then Lucy started trash talking right away. Like, oh, Kylie, welcome to the text group. Haven't seen you all season, But I think that he might not have been happy sending that congrats, Mom thing, but there's something to learn there.
Absolutely. And, he will remember this.
Yeah, it's a core memory. He may be like, that sucked. But you learn so much from that.
But think how wonderful he'll feel when he wins.
I know. We're going to have to go all in if he wins. But he's going to maybe, who knows, maybe he becomes the stat guy. Sometimes something happens and you say, I'm gonna figure this out. I've seen students do that. I mean, I feel like sometimes myself in my business journey, I'm thinking, I got to figure this out now.
That's right.
Who knows? And in the end, not everyone gets a trophy. That's how life is. It is what it is. We're going to go to our signature question, which is a new question for season 5. If your life were a movie called The Champion Within and the screen fades to black, you're left on a cliffhanger, what's the audience screaming for you to do next? What bold move do you think they're posting about online? I know you're not always on Facebook. You boycott it sometimes. But what are they going to and posting and hashtagging, blowing up about?
Well, I'm picturing this, and I'm also picturing that instead of it just being a movie, it's kind of a movie where I'm on a game show. Because I've always wondered why it is on game shows that people don't go all in. Here's the Jeopardy question, and you only bet $1. You walked in with nothing. Go for the big bang. You're either all in or all out. So I'm hoping that if it's the screen's going to black, the audience is going to go, she went for it?
Okay. I love it. And we're going to see what you go for. I'm excited for that. I'm going to give everyone updates, see what she does next. Maybe it's that underground bowling. We don't know what she's going to do, but she will go all in. And if you know me, we've ever been in person, now you know where I get it from, going all in. Well, thank you, Mom, so much for coming. I learned some stuff tonight that was pretty cool. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm wishing lots of wonderful things for all of the champions that you work with, as well as yourself.
Well, thank you so much. I love that. I love them. So thank you for listening to The Champion Within. I don't know who she's going to text this week and say, what a great conversation that was. Is she going to say that about herself? It has been a pleasure talking with her, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week.
Thank you for hanging out with Kate today. And whether you're going to coach, teach, cheer from the sidelines, or hitting the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show for the latest episodes, as we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and sanity in our busy lives. Now, go and unleash your champion within you, one step at a time. We're always rooting for you.